Hi, my name is David Rippy. I am a certified hypnotherapist. This client came to me looking for a past life regression. A past life regression is where I take someone into a deep hypnotic state where they can recall details of a previous life. She found herself recounting a life as a Nazi lieutenant in World War II, stationed with the Third Reich 18th Battalion. She takes us through the capture of Belgium and describes in detail her final hours when they were ambushed by the British at the border. Afterward, she goes into incredible and insightful detail around the current age we are now in, the age of Aquarius. Please leave comments and subscribe to my channel at David Rippy, as there will be more to follow. Enjoy. We're starting to see not only the field of flowers in our mind, and the bubble we are floating in, observing our golden bubble floating along. We're going to relax enough to start to see some other things that are in our journey. Beyond the field of flowers that we are now starting to come to the end of. And looking out with our protective bubble, we want to think of a time we knew in the past. And as you hear my voice, wide awake and not falling asleep, I'd like you to describe to me, take your time, what your mind is showing you now, and what you want to tell us about it. Tell us what you see.
I see a tank.
Okay. A tank? Like a water tank? Or what kind of tank?
Like a military tank.
Oh, a military tank, okay. Can you describe it to me a little?
It's gray. It has a circle and a number painted on the side.
Okay.
Men are inside and the top is open.
Okay. And what kind of terrain are you crossing on with this tank?
The ground is wet.
Okay.
The sky is cloudy. There's smoke in the air.
And where do you think this tank is right now?
People are speaking another language.
And you're hearing them speak in the tank?
I think they're speaking German.
Okay. Do you see what year it is?
I don't know.
Okay. Can you give me the name of maybe a town that this tank is near? Or a first word, because it's probably German, right?
We're near Brussels.
Okay. Do you see yourself in the tank, or are you just observing it?
I'm just observing.
Okay. Why is it important for you to observe and see this tank?
The men inside it are in my company.
Okay. And do you remember what company that might be?
I'm hearing two numbers. Third Reich, 18th Battalion.
Third Reich, 18th Battalion. Okay. Do you remember who's like the leader or general of this battalion or this regiment?
His name starts with an M.
Okay. Is he a general? Or what is his response? What is his command?
He's a general.
Okay. Do you see in your mind who he reports to?
No.
Okay. And why are you moving toward Brussels? Do you know? Or why are you in Brussels?
We just captured it.
Okay. Was everybody happy about that?
Yes.
Okay. Do you see now maybe what year or month you captured Brussels? You see like the month, or what was the weather like that time of year?
It's cold.
Okay. Do you remember what month was it, before Christmas, after, or do you remember?
I don't remember.
Okay. But you know it was cold. When you think about it, do you see like a month in your mind that might ring a bell or resonate with you?
There are still leaves.
Okay. Were they turning brown, or are they already brown?
Yes.
Could it have been before Christmas, you think? Do you remember you celebrated before or after the capture of Christmas? See any signs of celebration or happy or
I don't know.
okay. Now, how long were you there in Brussels, or how long was this tank there?
10 months.
Okay. Now, were you part of this tank, or what is your connection there?
The men inside are in my company.
Okay. What would you see, just observing, do you see yourself in Brussels?
Yes.
Okay, could you tell me what you look like? What your uniform looks like?
I'm tall. I have dark blonde hair and a mustache and gray eyes.
Do you remember your rank?
I'm a lieutenant.
Okay. Do you see, even if it's in German, do you see your first name? Or what kind of pops in your head?
I don't know my name.
Okay. But you feel you're a lieutenant.
Yes.
And how long, do you remember when you enlisted into the Army? What year was that maybe? How old were you? How old were you when you went to war or fight?
23.
Okay. So you were 23 years old. Do you remember what month you were born?
No.
Okay. Do you feel relaxed enough? Do you feel like you can see everything pretty clearly? What did you do in Brussels? Was it a big fight or a little fight? Was it easier than you thought going in?
The town is smoking.
Okay. Was the town Brussels or one right outside of Brussels?
Outside of Brussels.
Okay. Do you remember, if you remember looking at a map as a lieutenant, do you see where that town was on the map in relation to Brussels? Was it circled red somewhere on the map around Brussels? Well, where did that town start with? What was the first letter of it?
It starts with I.
Okay, the town started with an I. Do you remember, was it north of Brussels or south or east or west?
Southwest.
Southwest of Brussels, okay. Do you remember how many clicks or kilometers from Brussels it was roughly?
No.
Okay. Do you know how many miles it was?
No.
Okay. Do you remember what kind of tank you were watching or with? What kind of tank was that? Does it have a name?
It has a name.
Okay.
It's a name that's well known today.
Okay. Was it made by Germans in Germany?
Yes.
Do you remember how much it weighed roughly? Like how big was it?
It was a newly developed machine for war.
Okay. Did you ever get to ride the tank?
Yes.
Was it fun?
Yes.
Okay. Do you remember what kind of gun it had and what kind of size of projectiles it shot?
It killed anything in its path.
Okay. Do you remember how far the bullets would go with the projectiles when you guys would shoot them in other tanks?
Over 50 yards.
So easily over 50 yards, right? Okay. Now, as you're looking at that life as a lieutenant, and you said you were in this little town, do you see the name of the town that started with an I? Do you see that now?
There's an S and an N in the name.
So I, S, and N. Was that the first three letters, or what do you see?
I don't know.
Okay. And do you see maybe just a rough idea? You said it was kind of there were still leaves on the trees. It was cold though.
Mm-hmm.
Did it feel like November, December, October? Do you remember?
November.
Okay. Middle November maybe, or end, or what do you think? Maybe when you rode into that town.
We arrived in the beginning of November.
So pretty much the beginning of November, okay. And you're pretty sure with your eyes, as you just kind of think about it with your mind's eye, or what you hear in your mind, that the town was maybe started with an I, but it had an N and an S. Was it 2 syllables, you think, or just 1?
2.
So 2 syllables. Was it in another language? Like
Yes.
French, or what was the language?
I don't know.
Okay, you didn't recognize it?
No.
Okay. Did you see any other letters besides an I and an S? Any other ones you can tell me?
R.
Which one?
The letter R.
So there was an I, an N, an S, and an R. And what other vowels were there?
I can't tell. The map
Okay,
is torn.
I understand. Do you see any other consonants or anything, or not really?
No.
Okay. Now let's go forward a little bit. You said you stayed in Brussels, or outside of Brussels, in this little town for 10 months. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. And you think you were around 23 at the time, right?
Yes.
Do Do you see your name now, your first name? What letters were in your first name? And I want you just to hear my voice and no other noises. Go ahead.
My first name isn't on my uniform. Just the first letter.
Okay, and what was the first letter? You remember?
K.
Okay. So your name tag, when you're staring at your uniform that you're in as an observer, give me the last name. Look really at that name tag. Take your time.
It starts with an H.
Okay, starts with an H. And what's the next letter? What's the vowel? Was it a vowel next? What did it sound like in your mind? If somebody addressed you and you turned around real suddenly and saw it.
The name Hertz. Hertz.
Okay, so you think that was your name? Or was there more to the name? Was it one syllable?
It was something like Hertz, but I think just the way that name sounds.
So did it feel like
Hertzoff or
Okay.
Hertzl.
So something with maybe the first syllables like Hertz, right?
Yeah.
Okay, now let's just look at that second syllable. Let's forget about Hertz. What did that second syllable sound like?
Off.
Say that again.
Off.
So like Hertz off, O-F-F, or Hertz og, O-G?
O-F.
And was that almost, so your last name you think was like two syllables?
Yeah.
And the first name, what did that start with again? Give me that first letter of your name again.
K.
Okay. So it felt almost like your name, and correct me if I'm wrong, that it might have been K. Hertzoff.
Yes.
Does that sound right? And you think you were a lieutenant in this battalion, is that correct?
Yes.
And how old were you again, roughly?
23.
Okay. Were you married?
Yes.
Okay. Did you write letters to your wife while you were away?
Yes.
Do you remember what was her name?
Laurel.
And how did you say that again?
Laurel.
Laurel. Like L-A-U-R-E-L?
Yeah.
Okay. Did she have a middle name by any stretch, by any chance? Do you remember any nicknames or middle names? Any come to mind?
No.
Okay. Did you have children?
Yes.
And let's think about that for a moment. Kind of watch the children as they play. And how many children did you and Laurel have?
We had 2 sons.
2 sons, okay. Now, when you were 23, how old was Laurel, roughly? She older or younger than you?
She was 18.
Okay. So when you were 23, she was 18. And how old were you when you got married?
22.
So you had been married about a year before you left. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Okay. Now, do you remember what year you got married? What year was it? Or what was the wedding date? What month was it?
I don't know.
Okay. Did you get married in a church? Or did you get married at home? Or where did you get married? Do you see the wedding?
Yes.
Good. Let's go to that wedding for a moment. And then we'll go back to the children. Okay, I'm sure the children weren't at the wedding, or they weren't at the wedding probably either. But looking at that wedding, what town did you get married in?
Don't remember the name.
Okay. Do you remember what religion the church was?
Catholic.
Okay, so it was a Catholic church. And you had a Catholic priest do the wedding ceremony?
Yeah.
Okay. Do you see your parents there with you getting married?
No.
They weren't at the wedding?
No.
As just an observer. Were they passed away?
Yeah.
Okay. And what was your father's name that passed away? Do you remember?
His name was Derek.
Derek, okay. And what was his last name? Was it the same as yours?
Hertzoff.
Say that again.
Hertzoff.
Hertzoff, okay. And do you remember your mother's first name? What was her name?
Marguerite.
Marguerite? Okay. What were your children's names? Let's go and look at your children. What were their names? And how old were they when you left for war in 23? Or 22?
Two and a half. In less than a year.
Okay. Do you remember those boys' names? What was one of the sons' names? Who was the oldest?
John.
John was the oldest. So he was about 2.5 when you left. Is that true?
Yes.
Okay. And what did you and your wife name the younger one? Do you remember?
His name started with an R.
With an R. Was it a long word or one syllable, do you think?
It was not long.
Okay. Was it Rick? Rolf? What did it sound like?
Raoul.
It was like Raoul? Or
Yes.
something like that. And how would you spell that?
No. Rafe. R-E-I-F. Rafe.
Rafe. What a nice nice name. And he was pretty young when you left, wasn't he?
Yeah.
Did you miss your boys and your wife?
Yeah.
Okay. Now, why did you leave? Did you have to leave? Was it required that you left to go to war, or did you want to stay with your family, or did you think it was the right thing to do? What was your mindset when you decided to leave? Or when you were told to leave?
I was doing my job.
Okay. So you were doing your job. Was it a job that you felt it was for the country, or for, what was it for?
Our boss told us what our job was, and we did our job.
Okay. And who was your boss? Do you remember his name? Who was ahead of you as a lieutenant? Who was your immediate supervisor? What was his name? What was his rank?
I don't remember his name.
Okay. Did you and your friends in the tank call him some like name that he probably wouldn't have liked, or not? Do you remember?
We didn't call him names.
Okay. So everybody was pretty proper and did their job. Is that right?
Yeah.
Okay. Now, did you go home after the war, or what happened?
I didn't go home.
Okay, now you're just observing, okay? I want you to just observe. We're not getting emotionally involved. We're just kind of looking at that life. And your name, and you were a lieutenant again, is that correct?
Mm-hmm.
And I want you to just relax. And your last name was what again?
Hertzoff.
Okay. So now we're just going to view that life. We're not going to get involved. We're not going to get emotional. We're just observing. That life is gone. And it's done, and that's okay. But I want you to tell me, do you see yourself? How much longer did you go from that town outside of Brussels and go somewhere else after that in that 10 months? Or where did you go after that?
We were stationed there.
Okay. Now, you had said earlier you were there for 10 months. Was it longer than that, or did you leave after that, or just stay there?
We were there for 10 months.
Okay. And then where did you go from there? You see where
We traveled south.
Okay. You traveled south. Okay. That's good. And let's go on that journey again together. We're leaving a small town outside of Brussels where we've been for the previous 10 months. And we're going south, just kind of going along. How many tanks were in your battalion, do you think?
13.
13? Okay. And was your tank in the middle of the 13, or sort of in the back or the front? Or where was your tank in that line of 13 as you look down at it?
There were 2 ahead of us.
2 ahead of you, okay. Were you riding in the tank at that time when you were going south, or how did you get there? How did you go south yourself?
It's in the tank.
All right, so you got in the tank with them. Were you a tank commander, or who ran the tank?
Another man.
Was he pretty good, the other man, your friend?
My colleague.
Your colleague, okay. Did you not like him too much, or how did you get along with the other men in the tank?
He was a wise ass.
So the tank commander was a wise ass, right?
He thought he was the commander, but he just drove the thing.
But he thought he was kind of cool overall?
Yeah.
Okay. What was his name? What was his first name?
Started with a P.
Started with a P.
Philip.
Okay, Philip. And what was his last name when you looked at his tag or just kind of thought about him? What was his last name? What did it start with? Can you remember?
I can't see his name.
That's okay. How many people were in the tank with you? How many other guys besides you and Philip?
3.
3 other guys. And what were their names? Do you remember? Got any other names? What are those guys' names? Did you have any buddies on the tank you were closer to?
Jeremy.
So Jeremy, was he a pretty good guy?
Yes.
Okay. So he's a good friend of yours. Is that what you're telling me?
He was an honorable man.
He was what?
He was an honorable man.
An honorable man. And what was Jeremy's last name?
Buchanan.
What's that?
Buchanan.
Was it Buchanan?
Yes.
Was he German?
Yes.
He was German. Okay. But his name was Jeremy Buchanan, like the U.S. President Buchanan?
Yes.
Okay. Do you remember Jeremy's middle initial? Did he have one? Or you don't remember?
I don't know.
Okay. What was Jeremy's job on the tank? What did he do while Philip was driving?
He operated the machine gun.
He operated the machine gun. Okay. And what kind of bullets did it shoot? What were the calibers of those bullets? Were they big, like long, or what do you think they were? What would Lieutenant Hertzoff have thought when he's looking at those bullets and he's holding them in his hands, or holding that belt in his hands? How long were those bullets when you look at those? Were they 3 inches, 4 inches, 1 inch? What size do you think those bullets were?
About 3 inches long.
About 3 inches long, okay. Now, as lieutenant, what was Philip's rank as the driver? What was his rank? Do you remember? Did you outrank him? Or were you guys both lieutenants?
He was lower than me.
He was lower than you?
Yes.
Okay. So lower than a lieutenant. What do you remember what he was, what his stripes were, or what was he? Just roughly, but you know.
I think he was a colonel.
Well, colonel. You're saying you thought he was a colonel? Okay. Now you were only a lieutenant though, right? And you were usually colonel.
Jeremy.
Oh, Jeremy. You're saying Jeremy was a colonel?
Yes.
Oh, and what was Philip again? Do you remember? So you're saying you think Jeremy was riding in your tank and he was promoted to colonel, and his name was what? Jeremy Buchanan? Is that what you thought it was?
His name was B.U.
Say that again.
His last name was B.U.
And what was the rest?
Sounded like cannon, but I don't remember how it was spelled.
Okay. But it was different than what we know as Buchanan. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Okay. So it was like, and he was a colonel. Is that what you remember?
Yeah.
Okay. Was it unusual to have a colonel ride in your tank, or was that pretty common on a couple of the other tanks? Or was he the only colonel in those tanks?
He was the only colonel.
So he was allowed, he rode in your tank, is that correct?
Sometimes.
Okay, so when he go, he was the only colonel of those 13 tanks, is that correct?
Yeah.
And he picked your tank, and that was the big moment when he rode in your tank, is that right?
He did what he wanted.
Okay. Was it nice having him on board, or did he make you a little nervous when you were going south? Or
No,
not really?
he was a reassuring person.
Okay, he was a reassuring person. So he made you feel safer having him in there with you because he's a pretty nice, honorable man. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Okay. Now, when you headed south from that town, and I think you told me, what letter did the town start with again that you left?
An I.
With an I, okay. And you don't see the name yet, but you know it had an I, an N, an S, and an R. Is that correct?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Do you remember what Jeremy told you, the colonel? Did he tell you that the town is how far from Brussels? Did he ever share that information with you roughly?
About a day's ride.
A day's ride by tank, is that correct?
Yeah.
Okay, about a day's ride by tank. And can I ask you this? There was a new modern machinery of war, your tank, is that correct?
Yeah.
And how fast would that tank go? What did you normally travel at? What speed do you think?
About 65 miles per hour.
You would travel almost that fast.
Roughly. On a flat terrain.
Like on a road. Like
Yeah.
a paved road, right?
Yeah.
So it would almost go as fast as 65 miles an hour. Was that 65 kilometers or was that miles?
Kilometers.
Okay. So it would go about 65 kilometers. And that was considered pretty darn fast for the day. Is that correct?
Mm-hmm.
So when you went south, we left that little town that started with an I. We headed south. 13 tanks, right?
Yeah.
How far did we go and how fast were we going to go south? Do you remember, was it kind of slow or was it maybe 15, 20 clicks just to be safe, or what was the speed roughly?
We were not in a hurry.
So you were just kind of taking your time?
Yeah.
Okay. Were there concerns about enemy fire coming at you or something?
Yeah.
Okay. Was there a very big presence of American troops there at the time that you were a little concerned about?
American and British.
So American and British troops, okay. Did you lose some friends, not looking at yourself yet, but did you lose some other tanks in the process trying to make that ride south?
We were ambushed.
Okay. And how far down south were you ambushed? Do you remember?
We were at the border.
The border, okay. And what were the country's borders again? Can you tell me that?
I don't know.
Okay. But you remember going south from Belgium, correct?
Yeah.
Okay. You went south, taking your time because you're a little concerned about British and American other fire. Is that correct?
Yeah.
And you were attacked near the border. Is that what you're telling me?
Yeah.
Was it almost right at the border? Like, oh my God, this is not good?
Yeah.
Okay. Just observe and tell me about that attack. What happened? Was there 13 tanks still, or were you still at 13 tanks? in your column?
Yeah.
Okay. Now I want you to just observe. And how far away from the border were you attacked, do you think? Did you make
Everything happened so fast.
Okay. Did you make it to the border at least, or you don't remember?
I don't remember.
Okay. You just knew it was coming up. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Like maybe Philip in the tank or somebody said, hey, the border's only about a couple of clicks away or something?
Yeah.
Okay. Did Philip tell you how far away it was, or he didn't know because we're just following the other tank in front of us?
He told me, but I don't remember.
Okay. Now, as you approach the border, you weren't at the border yet, but you're a little ways away south. Is that correct? I mean, north of the border. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Okay. Now, I want you not just to observe. Don't get involved emotionally. We're just observing. Can you do that for me?
Yeah.
Okay, I want you to just relax. You are protected. We're just looking at that life. We're not getting emotional. Can you do that?
Yeah.
Okay. Tell me what happened. Who attacked you?
So then we were pinned down by enemy fire. They must have known our coordinates. We didn't last long.
Did they take out all 13 tanks or what? Do you remember?
They blew up 5.
They blew up 5 of those tanks. And then there was what? 8 other tanks that didn't get blown up, is that correct?
Yeah.
And what happened to those people in the tanks? What happened then? Did they jump out or run, or how'd that work? What'd you see? And remember, you're just observing.
They stopped. And they unloaded their machine gun fire, but we ran out of ammo before they did.
Okay. And who was shooting that machine gun on your tank? Do you remember? Who was that soldier again?
That was Jeremy.
So Jeremy, and you like Jeremy, is that correct?
Yeah.
So he was doing the machine gun, and all of a sudden, those bullets ran out. Is that what you're telling me?
Yeah.
And then what happened inside your tank? What happened then? What do you remember? And we're just observing.
I remember the smell of gasoline.
Smell of gasoline. And why was that smell so much stronger now?
They shot our fuel tank.
Okay. Now, did you remember, was it the British or Americans or both that came at you guys? Was it a group effort or just one or the other? Did you ever hear about that later?
It was the British.
Okay. And how many tanks do they have compared to your 13?
I don't know.
Okay. Because it happened fast, is that right? Now, what happened when your gas tank blew up? And we're just observing. What happened then? When you smelled that gasoline? Take me through that.
In a matter of seconds, the interior was full of fire.
Oh. Now let's just observe. What happened to everyone then?
Our tank exploded.
Okay. Now, can we just observe and not get emotional now? Can we do that together?
Yes.
Knowing we're protected, right? What happened next? It exploded, then what happened? What happened to Lieutenant Hertzoff? What happened? What do you see? Just observing. How did you see yourself? Or him? Just observe. Don't get emotional. What happened?
My leg blew off. My body was thrown. I hit something. It broke my jaw. And I don't remember anything after that.
Okay. When the tank was on fire, let me ask you this. Did Lieutenant Hertzoff try to get out of the tank while it was on fire?
No, everything happened too fast.
Okay. So it happened too fast, but the tank, you said the tank like blew up. How did you get out of the tank, or were you still in the tank when it blew up?
I was still in the tank.
Okay. But somehow you remember that you got thrown around in the tank, and somehow your leg was blown off in the process. Is that correct? And then you hit your jaw. Is that correct?
Yeah,
And then what? It was just over. Is that correct?
that's it.
Okay. Which leg was it? Do you remember? Was it your left or your right leg?
My left leg.
Okay. Now we're just observing. That's all you remember from that. Okay? Was everybody else killed in the tank too? Jeremy and Philip and everybody?
I could hear them screaming.
Okay. Were you already gone before they died? Do you remember? Or was it everybody about the same time?
I don't know.
Okay. Well, when your leg was blown off, then you hit your jaw. That's all you remember from the tank. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Okay. Now I just want to observe. What did you see next?
Nothing.
Okay. Was it just dark? Or was it light? What was it?
There was nothing.
Okay. So there was just kind of a void of nothing. No tanks, no noise, no smells. Just nothing. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. But were you scared at that point, realizing everything was nothing? Or what were your thoughts at that point? What do you remember consciously when you were there? Were you scared or didn't care or didn't have time to think about it, or what happened? How long was there nothing?
I don't know.
Okay. But there was nothing, and that means no light, no dark, no gray. Or was it gray?
There was nothing.
Okay. Did you see anybody else in the nothing, or were you by yourself?
I was alone.
You were totally alone. Okay. Now let's think together. Let's go forward a little bit longer. Just a little bit longer. How long were you in nothing?
I don't know.
Okay. So let's not look at so much as time. Okay, let's try not to think of time, because that's where it's getting a little bit hard to understand. Let's go to the end of nothing. Not thinking of time or hours or days or weeks or months. Tell me what you saw at the end of nothing. What did you finally come across? What did you finally see after nothing?
A pool of light.
A pool of light. Was it a big pool or a small pool? Or tell me about that pool.
It's about the size of a large pond.
Okay. So you found yourself in nothing, and then after a time, we don't know how long that was, suddenly, or maybe just a pool of light came in. Did it come in all of a sudden, or did it just gradually come into where you were?
It was sudden.
So a pool of light came inside. Now, what did that pool? What did it tell you? That you weren't alone anymore, or what'd you feel? What'd you remember when you saw that pool of light?
I was submerged.
Okay. So you felt submerged in this pool of light. Is that correct?
Yes.
Could you breathe in it, or did it not matter then? You were just surrounded by it. Describe that to me.
It was warm.
Okay, it was warm. What else?
It felt like things were vibrating.
Okay. Go on.
I could see myself again.
Okay.
But my leg wasn't blown off.
Okay. Keep going.
My jaw wasn't broken.
Okay. Keep going. Then what happened? When you saw yourself, were you happy then? Did you feel whole again? What did you feel?
I felt intact, but I felt sad.
And why were you sad?
I wept for my sins.
You wept for your what?
For my sins.
Okay. Now, what sins did you see that you had committed? Tell me about some of those. And remember, it's okay. It's all between us. What sins did you commit, you thought?
Murder.
Murder. And who did you murder?
Anyone our boss told us to.
Okay. So when you realized in that pool of light, seeing yourself whole again, that you recognized what your boss told you to do was killing another human being. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. And what other sins did you commit?
I envied and I lusted for power.
Okay. And did you want to be more than a lieutenant?
Yes.
Okay. And how did you think you would get there? Would it take more murder? Or give me some background on what you did. You just thought you lusted for more power. Tell me about that.
I was intelligent, but I wasn't a good man.
Okay.
I was conniving.
What else?
I was willing to do whatever I had to do, to the detriment of others.
Okay, keep going. What else did you realize about yourself?
Even though I loved my family, I would have killed them if I was ordered to.
Wow. Was that one of the biggest things of all? Did that really hurt when you realized the wrongness of that?
I wept for my sins.
And did you weep alone in this pool of light, or did you weep in front of someone else?
I was alone physically, but I felt presence with me.
Okay. Now give me some idea. Who did you think those presents were? Who
It
were
was
they?
God.
So God. It was God that you wept in front of, confessing your sins and realizing what you had done. Is that correct?
Yeah.
And what else can you tell me? What did God do when you wept in front of him? Did he say anything, or what happened after that? What was his response?
God touched my shoulder, and he told me that it was forgiven.
And that was that pool of light, did that feel like what we know as heaven to you?
I don't know, but anything was heaven compared to the nothing.
Right. Did that nothing, that absolute nothing, did you think in your mind, with what you knew as Lieutenant Hertzoff, did you think maybe that was what they talk about as being like a hell? What was your thoughts on that?
That was hell.
So why did the pool of light come for Lieutenant Hertzoff? What did God say to you? Why did he finally come to you out of the nothingness? Can you tell me what I talked about that?
Well, in church we were taught that you had to do penance, and then you had to atone.
Okay.
The nothing was penance, but I would still have to atone for that life.
Okay. Is that what God told you? You had to atone?
Yeah.
And how would Lieutenant Hertzoff, let's go forward a little bit more. And we're just observing, that's all. Just learning and observing. How long did God stay with you then and talk to you? Do you remember? What did it feel like?
I spent a long time there.
Okay. And how long do you remember, how long did you weep? How long did you weep? Do you remember?
It felt like an age.
It felt like what again?
Felt like an age.
And what is an age? Can you describe what an age would be in, say, in Earth years today as our knowledge? How long is an age?
It felt like 1,000 years.
So it felt like 1,000 years, and is that what's known as an age?
Yes.
Okay. Is that like a unit of measurement in heaven to count for a certain time? An age? How did you know that? Did that just come to you while you were in heaven? Or how did you ever hear of that?
It's from a book.
Okay, what book is that? Did you learn that in school or in church back in Germany, or where did you learn that? Or did you learn that from God?
Something a priest said.
Okay. So it felt like an age or 1,000 years. And is that how long you wept?
Yes.
Okay. And after you were done weeping, and God told you were forgiven, what did God say is beyond that? Can you share that with us?
He said a life for a life.
And what did he mean by that?
That only by living, only by learning, could I undo the evils that I committed.
So was it like a karmic type thing he told you, a life for life?
I suppose you could call it that.
Now, what did it mean more than that? That seems, what was deeper than that? That you would have to learn what? By taking our lives, what would you have to do next? Give me a little background.
To kill is to become something other than human.
Okay.
You revoke your humanity by taking the life of someone else. And the only way to atone for that is to learn on the receiving end of that same violence.
And God spoke to you and told you that. Is that what you're telling me now? Or is that what
Yes.
you learned later on, what God meant by that?
That was what I learned.
Okay. So, even though your boss told you to hurt others, that's no excuse. Is that correct?
Yes.
You still have to recognize, regardless of who tells you to do things, that if you take another's life, God doesn't look at somebody telling you to do it as an excuse. Is that correct? Is that what you're telling me today?
Yes.
Okay. So has God ever told people to kill, or what about all that in the Old Testament? What can you share with that? Was God ever vengeful? Or are you not sure? Or how did he come off to you?
God said, "Vengeance is mine."
Okay. But that doesn't mean human. Is that correct or not? From your understanding.
God said, "Vengeance is mine." The implication being that humans have to stay out of his way.
Okay. Does God ever... Oh, how did he... When you first encountered God, you felt he was that pool of light that engulfed you. Is that correct? That lake of light?
Yes.
Okay. Was there anyone else that was with him in that lake of light to meet you? Was there Jesus or anybody else we know as ascended masters?
No.
Okay. So God came to Lieutenant Hertzoff in that pool of light, which was God. Is that correct?
Yes.
Now, when God spoke to you and said he forgave you, but you would have to atone for taking others' lives, is that something that will play out and feel what that felt like? Is that what your interpretation was?
He said, "It's forgiven, but you still have to atone."
Okay. Now that he told you that, did you feel relieved that you were forgiven by God? Did it relieve you to be out of that void, that hell you mentioned?
Yes.
Okay. Now, did you stay in that pool of light for a while? That pool of love and light? I presume it was love. Or where did you go? Where did you go from there as that soul, Lieutenant Hertzoff? Do you remember where you went from there?
I don't remember.
Okay. So let's go forward a little more. Just a little more. And when God left, and you were there, and you could see yourself whole again, let's think about that for a little bit. Did you see others eventually? Did you see houses? What did you see?
I don't remember.
Okay. Would you like to go on to, would you like to not think any more about Lieutenant Hertzoff? Knowing he's okay and he's been forgiven?
Yes.
Okay. Well, let's float along away from that life. I went and erase all the feelings, all the thoughts. And let's think about something else. Let's forget all about that and move forward in our bubble of life as we coast along. Can you do that with me?
Yes.
Okay. Now let's think, while we're just floating along, back over that beautiful sea of flowers, away from everything that we just thought about. Forgetting all those memories and moving on. Our eyes still open, looking ahead, seeing this sea of flowers in front of us. Moving along in this golden bubble, knowing the angels are there with us. And we're going to move on and forget about any other past right now. Can you see that field of flowers as you float along?
Yes.
What colors do you see in the field? What pretty flowers do you like and see?
I see black-eyed Susans.
Okay, what others?
Daylilies.
Daylilies, okay. And how far above those flowers do you think you are as you're floating along?
2 feet.
So you're floating right above them, is that right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So let's float along above the flowers. And as we're floating above the flowers, looking at the beautiful flowers beneath us, not very close to us, let's continue floating along, just floating along. Feeling so good, feeling so happy. All the stress and thoughts draining out of our bodies. Knowing that we're immortal and life goes on. Can you do that with me?
Yes.
Okay. So as we're floating along, we're going to move on and on. And we're going to picture an earlier time. Can we do that together?
Yes.
Okay. Now let me ask you this in your mind's eye, as we're just sort of stopping for a moment. Just kind of hovering above these beautiful flowers as we close our mind's eye in the bubble, knowing we're resting above this beautiful, safe field of flowers, just stopping for a moment. Just kind of rocking gently back and forth on the breezes of our life and our journey above this beautiful field of flowers. Can you do that with me?
Yes.
Just kind of stopping for a moment. And let's think about that birthmark on Amy's stomach. The one she has as Amy in this life. And let's just stop for a moment, just kind of gently float. And without getting emotionally involved, just kind of thinking about it a little bit. Does that birthmark that Amy has now, does that have any significance to another time or another life? Or is it just there?
It's from another life.
Okay. Would you like to look at that life with me a little bit, or what are your thoughts? If we can stay non-emotional and just observe. You want to look at that birthmark, or what are your thoughts?
No.
You want to skip that one for now?
Yes.
Okay, we'll skip that birthmark for now. We're not getting emotionally involved at all. Okay? Let's think about those little freckles above your eyelid. Those 3 little freckles. And we're not going to think about anything else. What do those freckles symbolize? Do they mean anything? Are they from another life too, or what are your thoughts on that?
They're a constellation.
Okay. Now let's just relax, and all we're going to do is look at it together. Just kind of relax. Knowing we're protected by angels and archangels, and no darkness or evil can come into our circle. We all know that. We're protected in our bubble of golden light. Now, what constellation do they represent? That is not coming from Amy's conscious, but coming from the subconscious in the bubble. What does that represent?
Orion's belt.
And say that again, please.
Orion's belt.
It represents Orion's belt. Okay. Now, why is that important? And tell me about that. What does that mean?
It has to do with the constellations during the month that I was born.
Okay. And was Orion in the house when you were born in this life as Amy? Is that what you're telling me?
Yes.
Okay. Was it by itself, or were there other constellations in that birth sign, birth star chart?
I don't know.
Okay. But it was something that was important, is that Orion constellation in your birth chart. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. Is there anything else you want to tell me about that? Any other significance?
The age of Aquarius. Or in the age.
Okay, the age of Aquarius. And is that what that also symbolizes to you? Or is that what you've been told?
It's a marking.
Say it again, please.
It's a marking.
It's in Mercury. Okay. Are we entering what's known as the age of Aquarius now?
Yes.
Okay. And what can you tell me about that age as you're floating along in your bubble? What can you feel about that age? What do you see?
Heightened creativity, innovation, an age of growth and progress.
Describe that progress to me. What do you mean by progress?
Psychic awareness.
So the age of Aquarius means progress in psychic awareness among humans?
Yes.
Okay. All humans, or just some humans, or give me some background on that.
Humans born in the Aquarius sign.
So for humans born under an Aquarius sign, that you see that they're going to have more heightened awareness or psychic abilities. Is that correct?
Yes.
Are they the only ones on that zodiac chart, or who else? What other groups? or months? What do you see?
It's different for every sign.
Okay. But does it feel to you, when we look at those 12 signs or the 12 months, and not looking at it as Amy, just looking at it as what you're being told, or what you feel in that subconscious bubble state as you float above the flowers, stop for a moment just thinking. Is the month, or those born under the sign of Aquarius, are they going to be more psychic than the other 11 signs in your opinion?
For this age, yes.
Okay. And give us some ideas of what might happen with these Aquarians. What are they bringing forward? What are they bringing for us, for mankind?
They're going to be able to cross the barrier.
Cross the barrier. And what barrier is that? Can you tell me that?
That which separates us from the divine.
Okay. Now, well, besides Aquarians, who else could be able to cross that barrier?
Anyone who is tuned in.
Okay, and how does one become tuned in? What does that mean?
Has to do with intuition, looking inward.
Say it again, please.
Looking inward.
Now, how do you know this? What have you heard this from your subconscious other side, or how do you know to look inward?
I just know.
Okay. So you just know that that's the way to cross the barrier. Is that what you're telling me now?
Yes.
Okay. Now, how do we look inward? How do we do that? What can a person do to look inward? Can you explain that to me? What do we need to do?
We have to recognize the interconnectivity of all living things.
Okay. And then what? What do we do next? Or what happens if we can't recognize that? Then how do we go from there?
We have to transcend our earthly shortcomings.
All right, tell me more about that.
We have to give up the things that are not important.
And what would those be? Give me some examples.
We have to let go of greed. The things that we hunger for that don't feed our soul. We have to sacrifice.
We have to what?
To sacrifice.
And how do we sacrifice?
We try to become as much like God, as much like Jesus. As we can.
And who else would be up in that area with Jesus? Who else that maybe is laid away for some people? Anyone else that comes to mind that might be not in our religion, but in other religions that might have helped others find a way?
There are many people who found the way.
So there's been many that have found the way. And the way is where? What does the way mean?
Jesus said, I am the way, the truth, and the light.
Okay. But others have found the way as well. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. And this is what you feel is the time of the age of Aquarius. Is that correct?
Yes.
And how long will that time last in Earth years? What feels good for a number for you?
It's hard to say, but I think it will be the next 40 years.
The next what?
The next 40 years.
So you think over the next 40 years that the age of Aquarius will become more into view for everyone?
Yes.
Or just the ones that go within? What are your thoughts on that?
There will be leaders that come forth.
Say it again, please.
There will be leaders from every nation.
They'll be arriving, you're saying?
They will come forth, and many of them will be under the Aquarius sign.
Will Jesus come forth as well, or will his spirit be with all the leaders?
This will happen before Jesus comes again.
Okay. Will they help pave the way for Jesus to come again?
Yes.
Like John the Baptist, perhaps? Is that what you're telling me here?
Yes.
Okay. And will the leaders be in all nations?
Yes.
Okay. And what can you tell me about these leaders? Where are they coming from? Are they here now already?
They are here or they are not yet here.
Okay. So over the next 40 years, there'll be some that come, some that are already here, and some that are yet to be born?
Yes.
Okay. Will they be on every nation on earth?
Yes.
Okay. Will they help lead or teach those that have not yet found the way inward?
They will have their followings respectively.
Okay. Now tell me about some of these followings. Are they going to be in churches, or where will these followings be held?
They're not confined to any building.
Okay. Will Earth in 5 years, as we know it now, talking about electric, financial, will it change in the next 5 years or 10 years, or is that answer no?
It changes every year.
That's a good point. Will the electric still be on as we know it in 5 years? In other words, will we get power from plants and generators?
Nothing is fixed.
Okay. So things change all the time, is that correct?
Yes.
Now, are these answers coming from help that you're getting from the divine side that's helping you?
I just know.
Okay. I understand. Nothing is fixed, so it'll just be a question of when. And is this based on human consciousness? Or what fixes things besides God?
Our free will.
Our free will. Okay. So do we have the ability to change things that might be harder for the human condition through our free will?
Of course.
Okay. And how is our progress going now when we look at wars, when we look at the Middle East? Or we see a lot of separation today with ISIS and Christians getting hurt. Where do we stand on that, finding that non-separation? Where does the human condition stand right now?
It's always darkest before dawn.
Okay. So is this considered how many years of darkness do you have left, do you think, before we enter that age of Aquarius again?
I don't know.
Okay. Has that not been determined? It's by free will?
Everything will be revealed later.
Okay. Do we see that some leaders may be able to help with the human condition and show that there's ways within that could get them closer to home than they are now?
I don't understand your question.
In other words, there'll be followings, but will these followings be of the leaders? Will these be more of a universal approach to where everyone is one, as opposed to the separation by some religions today?
Not every following will be a movement.
Okay. Will some try to show what their interpretation is of the words that Jesus spoke 2,000 years ago, and maybe how to find home or to find God in their view?
Even good intentions are flawed.
Okay. And what flaws good intentions? What could that be?
We're still only human.
So do you see that maybe what can start out as good intentions can unravel into ego? Greed?
Yes.
Okay. How can one continue to avoid those intentions? By staying always with the light and always having the best intents in mind when they make decisions?
To elevate oneself.
So you're saying if one elevates oneself above those he's trying to help, then that can be bad. Is that correct?
Yes.
In other words, if one takes one's wisdom and tries to share it, but maybe at the same time isn't as accepting as others on their path or journey at that moment, that's putting themselves above another.
You have to treat everyone as if they were your brother. The brotherhood of man.
Okay. So if I go out in the world someday and I look at each one as my brother, the brothers I have, for instance, now as an example, and look at each one as that in that particular fashion, not just, even better than that fashion. In other words, not being upset with them for not quite seeing things the way I see sometimes, but just having that love in my heart. Would that help keep me on the path of good intention?
Yes.
Okay. So that should be my primary foremost thing. Everybody I encounter, everyone I see, regardless of where they are on the path or regardless of what they do, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay.
There can be no judgment.
Right. So good or bad, they're all my brothers. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. Even though their actions, like what we see in ISIS today on our televisions. Look at those ISIS members cutting off the heads of other Christians or innocents as my brothers. Is that what you're telling me?
One man's problem is a problem of mankind.
And can you elaborate on that a little bit? In other words, if somebody's cutting off the head of an innocent, do we still look at them as brothers but confused? How does that play?
No one is beyond redemption.
So some are here playing roles, I presume,
They will answer for the things that they've done.
They will answer. Is that what you're telling me?
Yes.
So I should, as I wrote something in an email a few days ago concerning the garments we wear. Are you familiar with that from a few days ago that I wrote?
The Lord said, vengeance will be mine.
So a leader should accept all into his house or understandings, regardless of their actions and thoughts. Is that correct?
They will not all be united, though.
So if one approaches like Padre Pio, for example, or Mother Teresa, or something along those lines, or maybe Gandhi, not so much in his human foibles, but how he addressed all the religions when he gave his talks. If one takes an approach along those lines, would one be hard-pressed to maybe fall off the path?
No one is beyond redemption, but no one is beyond reproach either.
Okay. So this time that we're in now, would this be called the dawning? Or how long has the age of Aquarius been moving right now?
It started in 2008.
Okay. Not 1998, like Edgar Casey might have thought? Or we delayed 10 years, do you think?
It's possible that it was 1998.
Okay. So you feel pretty good about this, that you just know. And can I ask why you're there in your bubble? And as we're surrounded with love and light. Can we have Archangel Michael join us, or what are your thoughts on that? And let me know if you see or feel his presence.
He is on the left side of the bed.
Okay. Can you speak for Archangel Michael so I can hear the words? If I ask questions.
I can try.
Okay. So is he on the left side of the bed near me now?
Yes.
Is he standing behind me?
No, he's standing beside you.
Okay. And what's he look like in your mind? How tall or big is he?
He's very tall.
How tall do you think? Compared to me sitting here.
Maybe 8 feet.
Okay. So he's behind me about 8 feet tall, maybe, correct?
He's beside
Or
you.
beside me, okay. Does he have his sword and his shield with him?
Yes, his shield is on his back.